Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, you got a cable there. I
Technical issues already.
There you go. I am Michelle Wild. I am the founder and CEO of Best Brain Education Strategies and Technology. Some of you know me because you've joined our cognitive webinar series or our technology webinar series. So, welcome today. I am joined by Dr. Penny Trayner, who I'm so excited for you to meet. She is, as I mentioned, a hoot and a holler. We have known each other for a little over a year now and just love each other. So, Penny is in the UK and we have regular calls. And I am so excited for her today to present some of her pro tips for the best way to get back to school. So, Penny, with that, I will let you tell people a little bit about yourself. And as soon as you get started with the presentation, Penny, I'm just going to enlarge the screen so you and I will go away and they'll be able to see your great slides. Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And actually, it's because of COVID, we've known each other nearly 2 years now.
Is it really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we were in the Hancock building in Chicago, tilting out. There's nothing. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Michelle, for inviting me to come and speak today. Just to give a bit of background about myself, I guess I am a pediatric clinical neuropsychologist. So in the UK, at least, that means that I am already a clinical psychologist by trade. My background is entirely working with children and families. I used to work out in the community. My very first job was working just in a totally community-based service where my bread and butter was supporting young people in school. And then since then, I specialized in acquired brain injury. So I now run a community-based service here in Manchester, specializes entirely in rehabilitating children who've had acquired brain injuries due to either road traffic accidents or other kinds of injury. So hopefully today I'm going to bring some of that expertise and talking about some of the common things that come up for us in our service about the sorts of difficulties people might be having about thinking about coming back to school. But what I really, really want to do and what I'm really passionate about is linking that in with Best, Michelle, because as you know, I'm a massive champion of using the apps. They are so incredibly helpful and they are absolutely designed for people who have an acquired brain injury and actually for anyone really. They're really, really excellent. But what I like is they've really, really been designed with the issues in mind that we're going to be talking about today. So all the way through this presentation, we're going to be talking about my pro tips. What I'd really like to do is link them in with Best's best pro tips as well and kind of bring all that together and have a look about how we can use the technology to support some of these ideas. So with that said, shall we make a start? Because I feel like otherwise I'm going to be talking forever.
Let me do one thing. So for those of you that have joined us, give us a hi sign or a hey or something in the chat. I just want to make sure everyone can hear us and that everything is going good there. Good. Okay.
Hi. Good morning, everyone.
In the chat, you can certainly comment and that kind of thing. If you have specific questions, if you'd like, you can click on the questions tab and that will allow you and that will prompt us to know that it is specifically a question. So with that, Penny, I will monitor as we go and we will make sure that that I share all the different questions with you that happen to come in. Okay.
That's great.
All right. Okay. I'm going to enlarge the screen. I'm going to mute myself and that way you won't hear background noise. Penny, take it away. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. So let's make a start. So actually, I thought it might be worth just starting with maybe a little bit of discussion if anyone might feel comfortable to do so. Maybe to share either in the chat or if you can come off mute as well, if that's possible, Michelle. If you would like to talk to us, that would be great as well. Just tell us a little bit about what problems you might have had in the past with regard to getting your young people back to school, or what problems might you be thinking about coming up? I know it's a bit of a different year for all of us. So if you can pop a couple of things in the chat. In fact, I'm going to come out of this just for a second so I can also just see in the chat.
Any problems that you guys...
Any actual concerns that you've got, burning issues? We've got some ideas to go through some of these, but it would be good to hear if anyone has anything specific that's been on their mind.
They may be typing away.
Exactly. In fact, I'll put this back up, Michelle. You can just let me know.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you know. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We'll give it a couple, just give it a minute there, see if anyone's got anything. Or is it possible to come off? Come on.
Yeah, if someone that's participating would like to come on camera and share with us, just let me know in the chat, and I can then have you join us. We can have up to 3 people on the webinar simultaneously. So Penny and I will stay on, and then we can have one person at a time share if you'd like.
That's great. Thank you.
So going from a non-structured day to a structured day with the time demands is a challenge, one person says.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably, I suspect, the top concern that people raise or is on people's minds, all of us, particularly the very unstructured year that we've had.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We've got some agreements with Christy saying that it's the non-structured day to the structured day. So
yeah. Okay. Let's have a little look at some of the things that we find that come up in our clinic. So coping with change. So, exactly as we're talking about there, that we are going to be changing from one way of living back to another way of living. And for for most of our young people over the last year, that has been even more so, more of a change because they've been in and out. Certainly in the UK, with the lockdowns that we've had, children have had a really, really unsettled education for the last 18 months. So coping with that in itself, is a massive challenge for us all. But actually just every year transitioning back, particularly from the long summer vacation back to the school term, I think is a real challenge for a lot of families. Another thing that comes up a lot is about having just too much to suddenly think about. We've had the long summer vacation where we don't have to think particularly too much about getting dressed and what we're wearing and having the right equipment and getting to places. And now it's suddenly thinking about getting young people where they need to be with the right stuff, when we need to do it by. It's a lot to do, and timetables come out, lists come out. There's a lot of stuff to suddenly manage. The administrative demands really, really go up. And that's, multiplied if you have multiple children. And then people often talk to us about having specific worries about school. So, worried about friendships. For a lot of our young people, having the summer vacation or any vacation is a break from all of that social pressure. So they talk a lot about worrying about friends or even maybe teachers, worrying about the new teacher they're going to have. For young people with an acquired brain injury, particularly if they're in a big school, and in the UK, we tend to have generally smaller primary education, and then in high school, the schools tend to get a lot bigger. We have some enormous campuses, and people just really worry about getting lost. I don't know if about, in the States, but certainly over in the UK, often all the doors look the same. They're labeled the same. It's really, really hard to think about trying to navigate that environment. And it's a big, big stress. Also, getting there on time, dealing with homework, dealing with exams, all of that stuff is stuff to worry about, as for the young person, as well as the adults, as well as their parents, thinking about how we prepare them for that and make sure they're best supported. And then, of course, all of this extra demand and all of this extra stuff to cope with can be really, really significantly associated with more tiredness and fatigue. And, a lot of us manage that over the summer vacation by sleeping, maybe perhaps not in the best routines, but, getting sleep when we need to, napping or whatever. I've certainly had a couple of nice naps in my back garden during the lockdown. So, and this is summer vacation, so it's been nice. But it's, it's coping with that, and the prospect of coping with all of that can be really daunting. Okay. So let's, for the next, we've got doing well for time. Next 50, 40 minutes or so. So we've got some time for Q&A. We'll talk about strategies that might help. Sorry, Michelle.
So a couple of different things. Someone says dealing with scheduling and suddenly planning for homework, et cetera, into a regular schedule that may already be pretty overwhelming. So I think that's a really good comment. And then Anna says deadlines for her son's school. She's got to stay organized. Thank goodness for the online parent portals. For me, post ABI, I understand content, but it's harder to retain. Feel busy and don't review when I need to. So I think these are all really, you're going to get some really great tips from Penny today. And I just want to, you've mentioned this, Penny, but I just want to emphasize that a lot of what you're going to say about what you're going to talk about today is, for young adults and stuff, but for anyone who's going back to school or dealing with, it can even be work related stuff. This is very applicable and generalizes to all sorts of different areas of your life. So,
Absolutely. And thank you very much for sharing those really, like you say, excellent comments. And actually it raises that, all of this stuff we're talking about with young people or with young adults is also the stuff that their parents are having to cope with as well, just in their lives. So it's a kind of a double whammy. Absolutely. But yes, everything we're going to talk about today is not only helpful for ourselves, for children, for everyone. It's just about how you tweak the strategies to suit your particular circumstances. So I'm going to give you some good takeaways, and then give you some ideas at the end for where you might be able to get some extra support if you need it. But just before we move on, Michelle, I'm going to need you there for a second, because what I'd like to do is mention Strategize My Life here. I don't know if you wanted to come sort of mention anything about it, but essentially, in the best suite of apps, this is the app that I start with. This is where we record down strategies, where we record down things that are going to help us get through these day-to-day challenges, through meeting these new challenges of the new term, dealing with all the change, etc. So the app is a really, really useful place to record down some of the strategies we'll be discussing today. So it might be difficult to do that now as we're going along, but if you want to jot yourself down some notes, you'll be getting handouts afterwards with a summary of all the strategies we discussed. I think this would be the place where they would go. So yeah, is there anything more you wanted to add to that at all, Michelle?
Great place to start from within the best suite, because so much of what we need are strategies, and to have them documented, not because we necessarily need to look at them all the time, but when we need them, we need to know where they are and we need to know how effective they are. So thank you for bringing that up. That's great. Okay, I'm going to
Excellent.
and you're on your.
Okay, excellent. Nothing changed in my end, so hopefully has it yours. Okay, so the model that I want to talk about today is a model that was developed by a researcher called Professor Caroline Webster Stratton. She developed this program called The Incredible Years. It was actually developed in the United States. I think it's like 30 years ago now, so possibly more. I've been around for a while now. It's a very, very, very good model. It's a very robust model. Research has proven across a number of conditions, ages, nationalities, languages, that the principles within this model are really incredibly effective, and they are incredibly effective and can be applied universally across, to a range of situations. And I'm going to talk today about how the support I'm going to talk to about today is based on this model. We're not going to get a chance to do it all in a lot of detail. And like I say, at the end, I'll give you some information where you can get more detail about it if you want. But the bit I really want to focus on is this bit at the bottom around play and praise, which, some of you will be thinking, if you've got older children or young adults, why are we talking about play? Well, like any pyramid, these things are the real fundamentals, the real foundations of relationships with each other and with ourselves and the world. So if we have a really strong foundation of being soaked up with happiness, being very happy, being very settled, with the right things being praised and pointed out to us and reinforced and encouraged, it's much easier to then lay on all the kind of other stuff. So if we have to do discipline stuff, which is where effective limit setting comes on, and ignoring, it's much easier when we've got those really solid foundations. So I'll come on and explain a little bit more, but just keep this model in mind, that's what we're working towards. And like I say, I'll tell you a little bit more as we go along. So to understand, first of all, why play is at the bottom of that pyramid, and why I'm mentioning it to you today, young people, in fact, most of us, the primary way that we learn is by copying. We observe other people, we observe how the world reacts to our behaviors, how other people react to our behaviors. And the behaviors that we reinforce, they're more likely to occur again. So if we're trying to get organized and we're trying to get our young people to be organized and settled and safe, we need to be putting our attention on those things. We need to be reinforcing those behaviors. And so any reaction that we give to a behavior is known as positive reinforcement. And for young children, actually, for very young children, it's definitely just parents, really, that they really, your attention is the most powerful reinforcement. So you being there for them, pointing out how well they're doing, being there, using rewards, which we'll come on to in a minute, to keep those behaviors going, is a really, really powerful form of attention. As you get older, it's more about attention of your peers, or maybe other people that you admire and respect, teachers. Children really, and teenagers really, really soak that up. Young adults, it might be that they're craving the attention of their boss. So yeah, as we get older, the attention rule still applies, but we might just change who we're seeking that attention from. So the reason I mention this is because it's really important when we're talking about how we're going to support young people that we give our attention to the behaviors that we want to see more of. If we give negative responses, shout at stuff, shout, get angry, get cross, all of that can also be positively rewarding. You're kind of keeping those behaviors going because, sometimes it's better to have a blazing argument than to have no interaction with your parent at all. So it's just really thinking about where you're putting your attention. And removing an aversive stimuli is known as negative reinforcement. So, for example, if you are nagging at your teenager to do something and you're constantly, and by shouting at them, by them shouting back at you, you send them to their room. Well, you've removed the negative you've removed the negative for them. You've taken away your nagging. So actually, they might do that behavior again. They might kind of shout and kick off because it means that they can get away from you. So you have to be very, very careful with attention. And we refer to this as the attention rule. That children work hard for attention. Any attention given to a behavior makes it more likely to occur again. So even negative attention can be positive and keep positive reinforcement and keep behaviors going. And what we want to do is pay attention to the behaviors we want to see more of, okay? If you want your young person to pack their bag the night before school and check their timetable and follow through on checklists, then you need to pay attention to when they're doing those things and notice it and praise it, okay? So that they're more likely to do those things in future. If you're constantly criticizing them or getting into arguments about things, they're going to want to avoid that. And guess what? Avoidance is not going to encourage them to come down and ask for your help. They're going to be avoiding you. So pay attention to stuff you want to see more of and try to ignore some of that negative noise. Okay, so hold that in mind as we go along and talking about support principles. Okay, so at the foundation, the foundation of that pyramid I showed you, like I said, was play and praise. And what that's really about is about investing in your relationship with your child or your young adult. Okay, but when you're playing together, when you're interacting together and having fun together, it really bonds you with people. Think about the last time that you met with all your relatives and you all laughed and enjoyed each other. It's really, really reinforcing, and it really bonds and builds up a really positive relationship, which means when things get tough and maybe you have to tell them off, or maybe you have to get them to do something they don't want to do, they're much more likely to do it because they've got a really good built-up relationship with you. You've invested in that relationship. And the best way to invest in that relationship is through play. That is why that's at the bottom of that pyramid. And when I say play, yes, with smaller children, younger children, it might be about getting the bricks out and playing on the floor with them or doing some reading. But with your older child, it might be about just going outside and watching them, shoot some hoops in the garden, in the yard. Or it might be about asking them to show you their favorite video game and just watching them play it and trying to join in if you can. So it's just about tweaking it. And when we're adults, what do we do to have fun? How do we reward ourselves? How do we do things? What playful and enjoyable things do we give for ourselves to build up that relationship? Okay, so some top tips for play. If you have little children, and actually this works for everyone, use a technique called descriptive commentary. It's a very powerful form of attention. You literally describe what the young person is doing. So if it's a little kid that's playing with blocks, you might say, wow, you've got the yellow block and you're carrying it really well. Or in the case of preparing for school, you might say, wow, look how well you've packed your bag. You've got everything in there. It's fantastic. But like I say, we want to keep it play-based. With older teens and older children, you might just be commenting probably a lot less because, that might annoy them. But you would be making some comments maybe about how they're playing a game. Gosh, you're really good at this computer game. I hadn't realized it's a really cool game. I'm really enjoying playing pool with you, or I'm really enjoying watching you shoot these hoops, and just labeling what they're doing as a way of being engaged in play with them. Because when you're doing that, when you're describing what they're doing, you have to have 100% of your attention on your child. And if you have 100% of your attention on your child, they feel filled up with love, and they're much more likely to do the things that you're giving your attention to. So,
play, and we have people who are going to school, adults that are going to school. This whole idea, I think, is important too, for them to think about their own play and having positive self-talk within their own, within their own self. So could you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll come on to this in a short while about what happens when we get busy is we stop doing fun stuff. You know, we just start doing day after day, just doing the chores, doing the jobs that we just have to do to get through the day. Whereas actually what we need to do is allow ourselves to have some downtime and do things we enjoy. And like I say, for your child, it might be something like sport, but for you, it's whatever you feel is going to make you feel good. Maybe that's going out for a walk. Maybe that's reading a book. Maybe that's taking the time to sit in the garden and listen to the radio. It's about setting aside that real time for you. Okay, so it's thinking about, what do I need to fill myself up? What are the things that I do that make my heart sing? Okay, and they're different for all of us. For some of us, it's about drawing or artwork or making things. For the rest of us, sometimes it is about just going for a walk in nature. Whatever it is important to build those things in, because when we get busy, that's the stuff that we lose quite first of all. That always goes out the window. There's always something else to do. There's always laundry or other chores to get through first. And we squeeze out how much fun and enjoyment we have in life. And, you know, how are we supposed to keep ourselves going when we've taken away all the things that we find pleasurable? Yeah. So, Michelle, what sort of things do you do?
This is the part that I really need to work on.
So maybe we could brainstorm some ideas at the end and think about what people... I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone's got any ideas of things that they do that make them feel good. Michelle knows from talking to me that I have all kinds of crazy hobbies. So actually just this morning before I spoke to you all, I was DJing on a radio station because that is my play. I really enjoy music, and I've always loved it. And now I DJ, and so I go and do a little radio show, which for me takes me away from all the stresses and strains of life and gives me, you know, a couple of hours of just being lost in music and really enjoying it. So that for me is my play. But I also do other things. I go for walks, I bike, I do lots of kind of activity-based things, but also just kind of sometimes be at home and just play with my cats. Very nice too. So yeah, there's some ideas from me.
Yep. Play with a pup in the garden.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Christy likes to spend time with her miniature horse, Maggie.
Oh, wonderful.
She likes to play music and crafting and hiking, going to the ocean.
Oh,
Some
beautiful.
people like to sew. Lisa likes to connect with nature. Yeah, I think it's just so important to stop and think about that. And I'm like, you know, a hypocrite when I say it, because I know I'm not good at that myself. But nevertheless, I just wanted to really highlight that, because I think it's so important for kids. And when we're talking about play, we often think about kids and young adults, and we don't think about it for ourselves. So
absolutely, it's almost like thank you, Michelle. It's almost like you get to being an adult and suddenly, you know, you're not entitled to have play anymore. You know, it's something, and actually it's using play in its broadest sense. But like I say, this model applies wherever you are. All the things that we needed when we were younger, we still need now as adults. We just have to put on more attention to it and make it happen. It doesn't automatically happen in our lives so easily. Yeah,
that's great. Sorry for the distraction. Thank
you.
I'm
loving it. It's great. Thank you, Michelle. Keep it going. Any time away, we could talk about this for days is my only feedback. So we'll keep going. Okay. So playing with your children, like I say, just a few tips, letting them choose the activity. Don't make it a teaching opportunity. Don't be going, what about this? What about that? Just play, just enjoy. Okay. Just enjoy being together. Don't ask lots of questions. And when we're talking about investing time with your young people, we're talking about 5 to 10 minutes a day. That is all you need to do. Research has shown that is all you need to do. Parents worry so much and think, oh, I've got to sit down and play games with them for hours and I just don't have the time. And so we just don't do it at all. But actually, we should be able to find 5 to 10 minutes a day. And if we can't, then we need to really look at how we're organizing our life. And this is where I think, again, the best apps come in perfectly. Pace My Day, which again, Michelle, you might have some comments on. But, you know, like I said before, as life becomes busier, particularly in the run up to school and during semester time, what activities do we tend to put aside first? Well, we put aside our own pleasure, our own play. And particularly if you're a parent and you have to, you know, get your kid wherever they need to go and get them to their activities, there's very little time often for you to get yours in. So Pace My Day, and I know you've got some excellent webinars that people can download about this. You know, it's an app that's designed to help you with planning and structuring your time, so that play doesn't get forgotten, so that your time doesn't get forgotten, but also so you actually have some energy to do these things across your day. Because the trouble is, what we tend to do is we have these really busy mornings where we just about get through it. We get the kids off to school, And then we sit down, we collapse, and we spend a bit of time, we recuperate a bit, and then we get all our chores done. And it's a constant treadmill. And by the end of the day, we might be exhausted. So Pace My Day will just help you really plan out your life and structure it so that you're able to get in all of these important bits. And it just makes it a bit more, I think, manageable across your week. You can really have a look at your week and think, how can I get all this stuff in? I don't know if there's anything more you wanted to add to that, Michelle.
Yeah, I love what you said was great, but I love the idea of having a category of play in Pace My Day.
Great.
It's not a break. It's actually something that you're scheduling into your day.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we could create a category in Pace My Day called play, and then have some of these things that you really enjoy doing and
Fantastic.
have that as a structured part and incorporate that into the planning of your day. That's brilliant. Absolutely love it.
I
Because so often we only think of that as breaks. Like, I have to put all my stuff in and now I get a 10-minute break. But what you're talking about is really scheduling this into your day so that you're engaged. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah,
Rochelle loves it too. So awesome.
that's great. No, I love, and what I love is as well, because particularly if you are a brain injury survivor, it might be hard for you to generate, if you're exhausted as well, it might be hard for you to generate, in the moment, what I could do for 5 to 10 minutes right now that I could do to feel good. So just having them in there with some different options, knowing, very quickly, a quick reference guide to what I can go off and do now, I think could be really useful as well as that strategic planning going forward. So yeah, I love that. And I'd love to see people come up with some ideas and put that in there. I'd love, people to get in contact and share it on our social media so we can see how you're using it. So yeah, absolutely. Play should be as much of a priority as anything else. And unfortunately, the word play is sometimes thought of very frivolous, and people think it's not as important as other things. But you've seen the triangle, you've seen the pyramid, from a neuropsychologist, it's absolutely fundamental to everything. So there you go. I'm giving you all permission to go out.
I was going to say, you just gave me permission. Thank you.
That's it.
All right. I'll put this.
Okay. Maybe, Michelle, if it would be useful, you could pop in the chat if there's a link to any of the webinars on Strategize My Life or Pace My Day that people could link to. That would be great. Or any information they could get, that would be helpful. So they can start to have a look at some of these ideas. Okay, so the second layer of that pyramid I showed you was praise, okay? And again, praise is really, really useful because if we're praising stuff, we are giving it positive reinforcement. So what did we say at the beginning? Anything that we give positive reinforcement to is more likely to make it happen in future, okay? And what happens is, we get kind of busy in our lives and we just expect young people to do all these things, and we never thank them for it. We never point out that what they're doing well. But what happens is, as soon as they're doing something we don't want them to be doing, we're in there shouting at them, telling them off, giving lots of negative attention to stuff we actually don't want to see. So we talk in at Webster Stratton in The Incredible Years, the name of this program talk is using the idea of rose-tinted spectacles, okay? So I don't know if you have this metaphor in the United States, but it kind of means that you sort of put these glasses on and instead of seeing the bad in the world, you see the rosy things, you look for the good, okay? And it's a really, really nice place because not only are you reinforcing the behaviors you want to see more of, but also it makes you feel pretty good because instead of shouting all the time and getting angry all the time, you're doing something, you're saying nice things and positive things, okay? And it's hard to do this when there's lots of chaos and there's lots going on, but this is a good way. This is a really helpful technique of getting your young people moving and getting them back into all the routines and doing the things that we need them to be doing to be successful at school. And yourselves, praise yourselves. Because if you don't praise yourself, I can tell you, nobody else will do it either. And just as a quick example before I tell you about, in fact, let's come on, we'll go as we go along. So wearing rose-tinted spectacles, look for opportunities to praise. If you notice your young person has packed their bag the night before, spontaneously, without you having to ask them, really praise them for them. Go, that was a really great job. Well done. Thank you. That was so helpful. Thank yourself as well. Use specific label praise. So too often people kind of, use praise in a very throwaway way that you say, well done, good job. but actually we're not saying what they've done well or what they've done a good job on. So by being really specific and saying, good job for coming in on time, or in fact, good job for coming in a little bit earlier so that you had plenty of time to get yourself ready before bed, so you weren't all rushed in the evening. That was a really good thing that you did there. See, it's really specific, and then the young person or young adult will know exactly what they need to do in future to get more praise. They will know exactly what they've done well. Okay, so it's really important to be specific and just label what it is that you like or what you've seen done well. Use a warm voice. Praise immediately. It's no good, particularly if you have memory problems, it's no good waiting until later on to kind of praise the individual. You need to say, get in there and then and tell them that they've done a good job. My best analogy for this is, you don't wait until your young person is an Olympic swimmer before you praise them for swimming, right? You would start by going, well done for getting when they're really little, well done for getting in the water, and well done for swimming a length of the pool, and you build them all the way up. This is something we do much more with younger children. As we get older, praise again goes out the window. We become very self-critical and very critical of others. And it's just bringing that back and getting in there, praising immediately when you see it, even if you're kind of annoyed because they've done something else to annoy you. Just praise it. Praise the good stuff, the stuff you want to see, and try to ignore the other stuff as best as you can. And this is one that's really important. Avoid what we call sting in the tail praise. So, if you want to say to your young person, good job for following your schedule today. You got everything, all your chores done. I'm really proud of you. If only you could do that every day. Or why couldn't you do that last week? Once you add those stings at the end of it, it just takes away from the goodness of the praise. So this is praise is a really, really powerful technique. Honestly, when you finish this webinar, go away and praise your young people, praise your partners, praise your family members. You will see the effect it has on people. It's immediate and positive. But if you add stings in the tail, it takes away from it completely. And we are really prone to doing this as adults, okay? Particularly in education. Teachers do it a lot. Sorry, teachers. I know we have a number on this webinar, but there is a bit of a habit of going, you did a really good job this time with your assignment. If you could just do the same thing every time, that would be great. Okay. So you don't need the end bit of it. Just keep the positive bit. Avoid that sting in the tail. Don't wait for perfection. Like I say, you need to praise every kind of bit of the way. Life is always a learning journey, and everyone needs a bit of support. And praise yourself. Don't wait until your schedule is perfectly in place and everything's going great, and you feel like that might be an unattainable target. There's always going to be some things that get in the way of life. Just praise yourself for doing a good job, or doing the best you can that day, or getting through that day. It's going to give you that energy and give you that drive to keep going the next day. I think one thing we as adults are really, really prone to doing is, and everyone can recognize this in themselves, I'm sure, someone will compliment you and say, wow, your hair looks really nice, or I really like that outfit. And we just start criticizing, and we sit there going, oh, this old thing. Oh, no, this was a cheap thing. I just picked it up for nothing. Or, oh, no, normally my hair looks much better than this. Why are we saying those things? We're modeling. Do you remember I said at the beginning, that's how young people learn? So if we're doing that and they're watching us do that, what do they learn about themselves? And accepting compliments and accepting praise. So don't wait for perfection. Accept that praise and give it to yourself as well, because you deserve it. You're doing a really good job. Okay.
Of the stings in the tail, for one thing. And I think that not waiting for perfection, what you said, Penny, is so important, because we as adults so often sort of discount the praise that people give us. And that's what you were just talking about. And I think that's so important to just hear it. And again, I'm not always good at this, so I'm right there with everybody else, but I think really great advice. Excellent.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, beware of, modeling it to ourselves as well. You just have to get used to it. It feels very weird at first because we're not used to it. We're used to criticizing ourselves, but actually the more we do it, the better we get at it. So if you're doing all of those things, if you're using praise, you shouldn't need really a lot of reward stuff, okay? But rewards are a part of praise, okay? Rewards are just kind of an additional icing on the cake just to strengthen up the praise, okay? But praise should always come. We should never just be rewarding and giving out incentives. Praise is really, really that primary mechanism of which we get behavior change. But rewards can be really, really helpful as an additional incentive. You can have them as planned things. And I do this all the time. We all do this. You kind of say to yourself, okay, when I finish writing this report, then I'll let myself go and have a bit of that chocolate cake, or I'll go, well, for me, it's stuff like I'll go for a nice walk around the park. It's like a little reward at the end of it. Or it might be a glass of wine, whatever floats your boat. That's a kind of a planned reward for myself. But spontaneous rewards are also really fun. You know, sometimes you'll be out and you go, do you know what? I'm just going to buy that sweater because, you know what? I've worked really hard and I really wanted it. And so I'm going to have it. And also, you know, have you ever, it rarely happens, but it has happened. You know, someone sends you a bunch of flowers or something like that for no reason in particular. It's just a lovely feeling. It's really spontaneous and really nice. So you can do that for your young people as well. Okay. You can plan, you can have plans, rewards through reward charts, etc., and say to them, you know, if you do your chores at the end of that day, you can pick the family takeaway at the end of the week, or you can pick the movie that we get to watch on Friday night, whatever it may be, or it can just be spontaneous. You know, you did a good job today, so how about we jump in the car and we go out for ice cream, or we jump in the car and I love what someone said earlier, drive to the beach, things like that. They can often be things you were going to do anyway, but just make them a rewarding thing. Just label them as a reward. Say, this is a treat because you've worked really hard. You know, it's really hard coping with all the change and coping with all the stuff that we've talked about. So, you know, having rewards for it it's really important. And it's important to model that it's okay to reward yourself for hard work. But make sure it is proportionate to the task demands. You know, you don't want to be giving your kid $100 just because they took the garbage out once. Okay, so make it proportionate. And kind of really think about, you know, using praise more than you would be doing rewards. And a kind of finer thought on rewards are that always make sure you give them after you've had the desired behavior. So first you do the behavior, then you get the reward, because otherwise, okay, so, you know, here's a scenario. You take your young person to the supermarket and you say to them, if you can walk around the whole supermarket with me and stay by my side, then at the end you can have a chocolate bar. Okay, so that's scenario one. Scenario two, you get to the supermarket, you give them the chocolate bar, and you say, right, I've given you a chocolate bar, so please will you be good for the rest of the shopping trip. Which one of those scenarios are they more likely going to behave themselves? Okay, well, it's the one where they've got to wait for the reward, because it's worth it for them waiting. If you've given them the chocolate bar at the start, why are they going to bother? They've already got their reward. They can do what they like. So first you get the behavior, then you get the reward. That is why they pay us at the end of the month. First we do the work, then we get the reward of being paid for it. Okay, if we all got paid at the beginning of the month, I don't know how the world would function, how many people would actually go to work. Lots of us would, but I'm not sure everyone would. So use rewards with praise to really, really reward some of these behaviors that we're talking about getting organized and getting ready for school, but do it in a way that is proportionate to the task, and do it after you've got the behavior. Okay. So those are just some techniques in the armory that we're going to go through, okay, that we're going to think about. But are there any questions at that point on any of those techniques before we come on to think about how we're going to apply them to this getting back to school scenario?
Stuff in.
No problem. I can just grab a quick
I
glass
love
of
that
water while I'm there.
example. While people may be entering some thoughts in the chat, I love that example of, you know, do you encourage the kid to behave while they're in, or, you know, cooperate while they're in the store and then give them a reward afterwards? So many people give it in advance and expect the behavior to be there. So that's a really good example.
Yep. And we're often very disappointed. You're like, I buy them everything, and they still misbehave. You're like, well, it's just the way that human behavior works. You know, we have to work for stuff, and we need to help children learn what we call delayed gratification. So they need to learn to wait to get that payoff. And unless we encourage it, we're not going to see it.
That's really great. Really great advice.
Yeah.
Rewarding after behavior equals life payment for work done. Good. That's great. Okay. I don't see anything
Okay.
else, so we'll keep going.
Okay, good. I'm mindful of the time, so I will keep pushing through. Okay, so when we're talking about how to support young people, support ourselves, actually, any of us, about getting back to school in a good way, consistency really is key. We need to be structured and organized and consistent. None of us want to live in chaos. No one really wants that. Lots of us find that in our lives, but it's not really what everyone wants. There's so many things in our everyday life that we rely on being consistent. So we all know what traffic lights do, and we all know that red means stop. What if it just suddenly changed overnight and they suddenly went red means go? It would cause absolute chaos. We know what products are safe to eat because we have rules and we have regulations. So even all people that like to live very freely and easily and don't like a lot of structure and routine, there are some things that we take for granted that are consistent in our lives. And, if those things kept changing randomly and frequently, how would you begin to act? How would you cope with the world? And it's the same with ourselves when it's about getting back to school. It's about getting into a good routine and being consistent with it and sticking with it. And so it becomes kind of a nice, safe routine that you can just exist within. And you're right that there is a big change that's happening now. So we're going from summer routine back to another routine. So what we do is we start putting in those changes now. Okay, so we start maybe a week out before school of just getting back into the right bedtimes and getting those structures and routines in. And guess what? We can use play and we can use praise and we can use rewards to help ourselves get into those structures. But we need to start getting back into them. We need to be as consistent as we can be so that life becomes predictable. Structure, children absolutely need structure. Everyone needs structure, but children, they really want and they need that normalcy in their lives. They need that routine. They need to know what's happening. And if they're being constantly physically or mentally challenged by unclear expectations or an unstable environment, they will feel very out of control. And actually sometimes for some young people, when they feel out of control, that's when you will see challenging behavior because, when mummy's shouting at me or dad's shouting at me, that's predictable. It's like, okay, I'd rather they be shouting at me than all this uncertainty. I know it sounds a bit kind of counterintuitive, but that's what we see. When we can be really clear with our boundaries, children feel safe and in control. So we just need to take back control of that. And if we're worried about things and we haven't got any routines or consistency in our lives, that's going to trickle down to them. And we don't want our energy to be wasted with coping with the structure in the environment. If you've had an acquired brain injury and you're trying to use your executive functioning skills, well, new things need executive functioning. Every time something changes or something new happens and you have to problem solve, you're using up your frontal lobe, you're using up your energy. Whereas actually you want that energy, particularly in the case of going back to school, to be concentrated, to be spent on school, to be spent on learning. So if we can get in as much routine and structure and consistency in our lives as we can, then we free our brains up to be doing all the kind of the learning and stuff that's really, really challenging and where it should be. Okay. So lots of people I speak to are like, I don't want to be too rigid with my routines. You don't have to be that rigid, but it's about just having some kind of flow in your life that is consistent and predictable so that day to day, you know what's expected of you. And that's where the pace, where some of the apps, which we'll come on to through Best, can be really helpful, which we'll come on in a second. So children need structure. We need to be teaching them routines and procedures. And as adults, if we don't have our own routines and procedures, how are we supposed to teach them to young people? If you do something different every day, how are they going to get to know that this is what we do in our household? This is how life is. So it's about getting in, thinking about the flow of your life. What time do we get up out of bed? Then what happens? Then what happens after that? If we're getting ready for school in the morning, what's the routine? What's the order of operations to get ready? So we need to really start thinking about some of those routines and structures in our lives, putting them in, and then very soon they will become second nature and you won't have to think about them, and it will free you up to concentrate on the more complicated stuff. You want to create that order and you want to manage the physical environment so that it's not chaotic, so it's predictable. And that's where things like rewards can be really helpful because, you can say if the environment is, if you have a checklist that they have to talk through, which we'll come on to in a moment, by managing that and kind of saying, right, you get to the end of your checklist and then you get your reward, it means that, the world around the young person is very, very predictable. They know what they need to do to please you, to get the right result. Okay. And it's the same for us. I mean, imagine if you're at work, for those of us that do work, and every day you come in, your boss tells you something different. They tell you your job's different. What you're supposed to be doing is different. They tell you off. They might even criticize you for not getting it right. How stressful that can be. So by managing that, by creating some routine and predictability around the world, can be really, really helpful. And Everyone will need help to do this, particularly young people, particularly if you've had an acquired brain injury and you might struggle with some of that decision making and organization of your materials. They need help. It's not, we can't just expect that young people will know how to do this stuff unless we show them how to do it. So if their bag is always a mess, then we need to think, do they need some help to work out how to organize their bag? And do I need to go there every day, check it with them, praise them for it when they get it right, help them change it if they need to, and kind of build that up until they've got really, really structured and organized. Yeah. So support with that is really, really important. And this is where Cue My List comes in. So great. This is why, Michelle, I absolutely love using the Best Suite, because it's like everything I need to do, there's built in there. So it's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. It fits perfectly. So, when we're talking about getting back to school now, how many of us here, you don't have to answer this, but have a think for yourself. Do I have a morning routine? All those sort of routines kind of go a little bit out the window during summer vacation. But what is the morning routine? Where is it? Who knows what it is? Is it published? Have you written it down somewhere? Have you put it on the fridge? Is it in your head? Does a young person know it? Do you know it? What's your home from school routine? So if you've got a young person who's got an acquired brain injury, they might not remember. They might be so exhausted by the end of the day that they just can't function to be able to remember. But if they've got a checklist they can work through, fantastic. Okay. But also they might just be really happy and excited to see you and might not want to come straight home and do chores. Okay. So you might negotiate that with them and say, when you get home, why don't we do our fun 5 to 10 minute thing? Or why don't we just sit down and have a snack together and catch up about the day before we get onto all these things? So chores and things and homework and all the other stuff. So this is why if you use Pace My Day to plan your week, plan your days, you'll make sure that you have space for all of this. And then you can use Cue My List to build up checklists that you can follow or your young people can follow in order to make sure all of this stuff gets done. Lunch planning, I think this is trying to plan across the week how you're doing lunches and where they're all going, especially if you have multiple children. It's really, really challenging, but sitting there and working it out and having lists across the days can be really, really helpful. And planning for school bags. I can't tell you how many school bags I love to go and have a look in when young people come to see me, and I kind of open them up, and it really often is a window into their world at home. You go in there and you dig out rewards that they've had at school that they just haven't handed in because they've been lost at the bottom of the bag. So giving them a checklist on how to organize their bag and what they need to do can be really helpful. Empty out your lunch bag, bring that into lunchbox, bring that into the kitchen, empty out your PE kit, bring that to the washing room, whatever it may be. So yeah, I think Cue My List is perfect for these sorts of things. So I don't know, Michelle, if there's anything more you wanted to kind of add to that.
It was interesting. Yeah. I think one of the things that you mentioned, like the bag list and lunch list and those kinds of things. One of the things that you can do on Cue My List is you can create labels and headings, basically. So you could have a backpack or bag list, whatever it might be, and then you could have the front pouch would be a label, and then what goes in that front pouch. So it actually adds to their ability to really organize, and then also to know what goes where. Because so often what we do is we just throw things. In the last webinar that we were doing today, attention and memory. It's like you have to be intentional. You have to know what you're doing in order for it to really get into your memory. So in this particular case, we're using an external memory technique, which is Cue My List. And they're going to be able to know over time which things go in which pouch of the backpack.
Exactly.
Things. Even for women in purses,
Yes.
you've got so many different little zipper here and, area there, like where do things go? People, if you do that and if you're very consistent, that can be really helpful. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great example. And in terms of the lunch planning, you were mentioning over time. So I just wanted to give an example of what that might look like in Cue My List. So you could have lunch planning, and then you could have Monday as a heading, Tuesday as a heading, Wednesday as a heading, and you can go through and you can just look at the different lunch, what you might want to do for lunch over each of those days. And then that can become a pretty consistent, way of approaching it. So that I think, especially for parents that may have brain injuries, knowing that Monday is sort of, this is what you're going to make for your kids so that your shopping list can be very consistent and it all sort of ties in together. So
that's wonderful. Great examples, thank you. And this is what I mean about being perfect, really. I would love, in future maybe to do a follow-up of one of these webinars, and for people to bring along some of their routines, because I'm always really interested in, I don't think we're gonna have time to do this now because I just want to make sure we have enough time to finish off, but I'd just be interested in maybe just people, if they want to take a little moment, if we pop something in the chat, just to reflect on what are some of the routines or lists that they already use. Is there my favorite, my mornings, people laugh, I have been going to the gym, apart from during the lockdown, 3 times a week on exactly the same days, exactly the same times for about 13 years, because I train with a trainer, and people are amazed, but actually I'm just cued to it now, and it's just part of my routine, and I miss it when I don't do it. But I have to pack my bag the night before. I have all my systems, because, and if anything changes in my system, if people are staying over and they're in my way, it becomes a little bit more challenging. But this is something that I've internalized over time. I know exactly the route, what I do. I pack my bag. It's just something that's really, really consistent. So it's just a very small example of something that's been very consistent in my life for a long time. I don't know if anyone had any other routines or anything that they do regularly.
I haven't heard anything in yet, but they could be typing as we speak. So, one thing that you were just talking about, Penny, and I think this goes back to memory as well. You were saying you've been doing this for a long time. You pack your bag, you sort of internalized it. It's become a habit. But then all of a sudden COVID hits. You're not going to the gym. And now a year and a half later, you start going back to the gym, having that list in Cue My List or wherever you have it, right? That's
Brilliant.
where, that's sort of your security blanket, so to speak. It's where that information is going to be. And so now all of a sudden you start going to the gym and you go right back to that list. And I think that that's very helpful and very comforting a lot of times for people in general, but also especially after the brain injury, because people get to the point where I don't need this anymore. I've got, it's a habit, I'm done. And then
Yes.
as Christy says, like, something happens in your life and now all of a sudden that gets disrupted, and having it written down and knowing where to find it can really be a very a secure feeling. So Caitlin says meal planning is something that she does. Christy says leaving the house.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's another one. The keys, especially now in the COVID times, right? Mask, hand sanitizer, whatever else, the extra bits you need. And actually, Michelle, just coming back to what you said then, actually, it reminded me of when I first got back to my office after not being in there for several months. And I'd forgotten completely about what just stuff I needed to take to my office. I was like, what do I normally take? I was like, I need my ID badge, and I need this. And all of my routines that I had internalized, because I did it all the time, like you say, had been disrupted. So actually having that written down would have been really helpful even for me. It took me a while to get back into that routine. So I thought that was an excellent example. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's so important. And it ties into what we were talking about earlier today. A lot of the people that are on with us right now were there earlier. So that idea of attention and memory and stuff. And by the way, we would love to have you back for another webinar where we could go in and do some practical stuff. This is such a great overview and fundamentals. But you said it, so we're going to hold you to it.
I'm up for it. Definitely. So, okay, just for the sake of time, I will move on to the kind of last couple of bits I just wanted to mention. So, if you have to, once you've put these kind of routines in and these structures, and really, I hope that's what people are taking away from this, really, that's the key to coping with this back to school thing, is getting into those routines and structures. These are the things that are going to really, really help us. But actually, if you have to give your young people commands, or actually not even young people, these work for everyone again. If you have to tell them what to do, there are ways to do that more effectively. And I've just put them up here because this is particularly true of young people if you've had an acquired brain injury. We all, very often or not, we're sort of shouting from another room and shouting a whole chain of commands going, so can you put your bag away? And then when you finish putting your bag away, can you go upstairs and put your uniform away? And then can you come back downstairs and make sure you grab your laundry on the way? We call those chain commands. We're shouting from another room. We're maybe a bit cross, a bit, so actually we just need to, if we are getting young people to do, anyone to do stuff, but particularly young people, if they've had an acquired brain injury especially, is giving one very command at a time, gaining their eye contact first, so being in the room with them ideally, using appropriate language, so not cluttering our language, just being very direct, using a firm voice. So, for parents here, I always call, your mum voice, your dad voice, your mean business voice. It's that voice that, you need to do this, but you're not shouting. It's just a very clear voice. And if you're repeating, an instruction, use the same words. We often change our instruction because we think that the young person hasn't understood us. They've understood us. It's just that, we just need to maybe repeat the message a few times. So a really effective one that I find helpful that is used in the Incredible Years program is the when then command. So when you've finished your homework, then we'll go and get ice cream. When you've taken your uniform off, then can you come downstairs? So you're telling them what to do and you're giving them the sequence of what to do and when to do it. And guess what? As soon as they've completed one of those steps, you get in there and you praise, because they're more likely to think, oh, good, I did the right thing. Mum really likes it when I bring my uniform straight down. So just make sure that you're using praise. It's really, really important. And, if you have to put in consequences, pick your battles. Save no for when you really, really need it. Try and let things go as much as you can. It's important to stay calm. I've mentioned the TFB there. We're not going to have time to do that today, but I will include it in the handout. It's just that idea of how our thinking links to how we feel and behave. And maybe that's a whole nother webinar, actually, Michelle. I'd love to do that. But boundaries are not a bad thing. We really worry as adults that putting in boundaries is going to be negative for children. It's not. It helps them feel safe and know what's expected. But so having routines, having structure, having boundaries is going to make everyone feel much safer and in control of the situation. It's really important to stay calm, and it's really important not to give in and just abandon stuff. You need to follow through on it. If these structures and routines are important, you have to follow through. Eventually they will become habit, as you said, Michelle, in the household, but you just have to keep going with it. Be consistent. Consistency is absolutely key. So wherever you can, give alternatives and choices, use when then commands, and give learning opportunities. Like I say, we can't expect perfection the first time round. Let's praise, let's get in there and let's help young people get it right, and just praise kind of efforts towards stuff as well as kind of the result, really, when we're trying to get these changes in. But what I would say is, most importantly, you really need to remember to look after yourself. They talk about, not that any of us have flown, I certainly haven't flown in a long time, but I always remember you get on the plane and they always say to you, don't they, make sure that you fix your oxygen mask first before you help anyone else. And they do that because you're no good to anyone else. If you can't breathe, if you can't function, you're no good. You're not going to be able to help anyone else. So you need to look after yourself first. You need to remember your own pyramid. You need to make sure you're doing lots of playful things that make you feel good. You need to make sure you're praising yourself for your own efforts and all the hard work you're putting in, because it is tough. And you are doing a good job. You really are. Okay. So, doing great. 3 minutes off. Yay. I've talked, like Michelle said, there is no way that there's so many bits in here that I'd love to dive into much more. And, I'm really, really passionate about sharing this information. I really think it needs to be accessible for everyone. So I'm going to be starting up doing some of these little webinars myself. They're going to be very short, 15-minute things, 20 minutes maximum, of just focusing on some of these things I've talked about tonight in a bit more detail. So I'll be starting them in the middle of September. So if you want to follow me on social media, you can find me under Dr. Penny Trayner. And then, like I say, eventually I'll be doing them as sort of Instagram live. So they'll just be something you can access. And if you miss them, you can access them on our YouTube channel. So please do follow me. I really, really do want to help as much as possible. I can't obviously answer anything clinical direct about yourself or your young people, but I can share general tips, pro tips to try and help. The Incredible Years, actually, which is the model we used, it runs all over the United States. So there's the website for it if you want to look it up. They do groups of parents and teachers. This model is useful for everyone. And like I say, it is used all the way up from very little children all the way up to young adults, teenagers, older teenagers. It's really, really effective if you want to know some more about these things we've talked about tonight. And that is it.
Penny,
just about made it. 2 minutes.
Social media handle. Are you at Dr. Penny Trayner everywhere?
Right.
Or is it?
Okay. Yeah, that's me everywhere.
I'll type this in the chat. So at Dr. Penny Trayner, Trayner.
That's right.
And we will definitely be following you, as we already are, and we will try to get the word out. So let us know in advance, and we'll put some stuff out on our social media. And do you know what time you're going to be doing the live events?
Probably very similar time to now, because I would like to be able to capture, because obviously we work very closely with you guys over the United States. And it's just capturing. This is quite a nice time in the UK. This is just before dinner time in the evening, about 6:30 p.m. So the kids are kind of settling down to Saturday night TV. A lot of parents have maybe got a little window of 20 minutes they might be able to listen to something. So this is what probably about this sort of time is when it's going to run, which I think is what you like 10:30 in the morning, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, great, lovely. Yeah, hopefully that works well. Hope you all have a lovely Saturday. It's been a great Saturday here. So I'm just
Well,
going to stop
thank
sharing this for a minute just so I can
yeah.
come back
Thank
to
you,
this.
Penny. So much. So great. And, you know, one of the things that I love about working with you is just in terms of our communication and doing the webinar and just it's a natural flow as we talk to each other and as we share information. So it's just so nice to have you join us, and I hope that you will do this with us more in the future. So, and thank you for, you know, letting me chime in and ask questions. And I know that that's just, you know, the flow that you and I have, but I just wanted to thank you because I think it's also very helpful for other people. So great.
Thank you, Michelle. And honestly, thank you for all the work that you're doing at Best. These apps are incredible. All this information that you're sharing with people for free is absolutely incredible. I think you're working extremely hard to try and get as much information out to people as you can. And I think it's so valuable. And I'm always here to help. I can't wait to see you guys again. Hopefully we will all meet again somewhere in the world next year. When everything's looking a bit brighter. But in the meantime, would love to, do some more webinars. So definitely. So I'm really hopeful it's been helpful to everyone today. And, thank you all so much for your attention, and hopefully might see you online somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you're getting high praise. So everyone loved it. Thank you again. And we'll be in touch soon. Okay.
That's great.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Take care. Bye,
Bye.
Penny.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.